We hear that God's promised Spirit is to come to all people in today's reading. And that's great. But what is that promised Spirit? What is God's Spirit? Or even if we take a step further back, what do you think of when you hear the word God? Don't think about what you hear others say God is, but what you think it is about God that you know. Hopefully you think of the second half of Joel chapter 2, verse 13. God is gracious and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, and relents from punishing. Too often, God's people are far from those things, far from being gracious and merciful, far from being slow to anger, far from abounding in steadfast love, and far from relenting. Too often as God's people, we are far from those things. And too often, we leave the impression on others that God is something other than that. But God is gracious, merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. God relents from punishing. That is the message that we both need to hear and we need to proclaim. Too often, though, we attribute some horrific action as part of God's plan. A natural calamity that we say could have been avoided. Well, we might not say that. Let's be honest, though. Lots of Christians do. When we're at a loss to explain something, attributing it to God is an easy solution. Joel is different, though. For Joel, the country has been destroyed. What the cutting locust left, the swarming locust has eaten. What the swarming locust left, the hopping locust has eaten. And what the hopping locust left, the destroying locust has eaten. This from Joel chapter 1, verse 4. There is nothing left in the country at the time of Joel. Does Joel blame God, though? No. This from Feasting on the Word, a commentary. Joel is vitally interested in the responses called for by present natural calamity and by the future catastrophic day of the Lord. The prophet is silent about moral causality. It isn't about whether or not our morals failed or the morals of God's people at the time of Joel failed. What Joel is interested in is our response. Why wouldn't you want to get to the cause, though? Why not get to the root of the issue so that you can fix it? This further on in that same commentary. The theological world of Joel is one where God, humanity, and the earth interact as a single ecosystem. God, humanity, earth are a single ecosystem. In that single ecosystem, the cause of one situation affects another. And the effects of one situation cause yet another. In this scenario, God, us, the world, are all interconnected. There is no need, and I'd even say no benefit, to assigning blame for events in cases like this, which is why we come back to the beginning of this reading, and why coming back to the beginning makes so much sense. God is gracious and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, and relents from punishing. In the midst of all that is going on, the busyness, the angst from things not going as we expect or want at this time of year, remember that the God who is abounding in steadfast love is intimately connected to you. For that intimate connection we have with God, we give thanks today. Amen.